it's finally time to get a grip on the biggest and greatest of my ranking list sword far. The one I've been anxious to slice into, as many of you, half-sworded, been pommeling me with requests to finally tang on this weapon category. But no more hitting you up with less than guarded puns, I'll just cut to the chase and get to the point as we finally review and rank the many great swords of Skyrim from worst to best. This is once again based almost entirely on the visuals and aesthetics of the weapons themselves, and I will also once again be excluding duplicates and clones from the list. As always, if you find yourself enjoying the video, like and subscribe for more. Now, let's start carving into this. Number 26, Amber Greatsword. I admit, this is a very challenging category because greatswords are definitely one of the most satisfying and awesome weapon types within Skyrim and, well, everything else. So stiff and hard competition is expected here. Unfortunately, Amber makes an embarrassing showing here with one of the weaker blade designs within the game for me. This blade is just an absolute unit, but sort of in the worst ways, lacking some of the design nuance and care that I might enjoy with other Amber weapons. While it's appropriately large, the general design of this dummy thick blade and hilt does absolutely nothing for me, other than the general appearance of the amber itself looking appealing and the texture work being a vast improvement over vanilla Skyrim, of course. I'm not entirely sure what it is about the Amber Greatsword, but I heavily dislike most of its design. The hilt is boring and the grip looks cartoonish and goofy, with a large amber pommel and amber strips worked between the metal. It's really the same design as other amber weapons, but on the Greatsword it's very unappealing due to how pronounced and present the hilts are for this weapon type when stowed on the back. On its own, it's not a completely horrendous design, but compared to every other Greatsword in the game, is by far my least favorite. 1 out of 10 would not John Hammond again. Number 25, Glass Greatsword. For as much as I may love other glass weapons and gear, the Greatsword sadly shattered my expectations again in the worst of ways. Once more, I can't quite place exactly what I dislike so much about the Glass Greatsword, but I think it's a variety of factors that prevent me from using and enjoying this weapon fully. While I like the traditional glass feathered blades that make up the point and end, the hilt, despite looking almost exactly like other glass weapons, is just way too large and bulky in general. This sort of strange bulbous area of the blade halfway towards the end gives the weapon a weird, unappealing silhouette, and the blade itself looks way too large and clunky, lacking some of the more elegant flowing design of other glass gear. I think much like Amber, in total it's just extremely cartoonish and out of place compared to others within the game, as it looks almost straight out of Zelda to me. It's not completely terrible considering how fantastical its origins are, but one I find I never want to use almost solely based on its visuals. The textures and appearance of the glass itself is great, as always, but when it comes to the Glass Greatsword, I'll be fully transparent in saying it can be painful to look at. Number 24, Shadowrend. This Creation Club edition returns from the Shivering Isles expansion for Oblivion with a much different appearance, ripping off and really just copying the exact model from the Daedric Claymore within that game. Shadowrend can actually take two forms, and if you watched my previous video, you know how much I love the battle axe version of this weapon. However, unfortunately, the Greatsword just doesn't make the cut. Being a Daedric artifact powered by Shadow, I don't exactly expect realism, but I can't get over just how thin and flimsy this blade appears in general, and the slight wavy appearance only adds to its general visual brittleness. I get it's likely supposed to invoke some sort of Flamberge style blade, which could have been very cool, but it just didn't go far enough with its Flamberginess. Instead, we get a crooked thin squiggle with a strange knobbed point at the end, a shape I find hits too close to home for comfort. However, the hilt is awesome, with the dark Daedric influence clearly represented in the almost growth-like protrusions that form the guard, and the shadow enchantment effect remains absolutely badass. It's a shame the enchantment is fairly useless though, as making an enemy more vulnerable to magic isn't quite as useful when you are focused on smashing a large sword through their face. Overall, it's a mere shadow of the design realized within the battle axe and a disappointing rendition. Number 23, Iron Greatsword. Aren't you glad this isn't higher on the list? While the Iron Greatsword is objectively worse than the 3 swords just listed, I think aesthetically it has a solid, if not cartoonishly large design that sort of okayishly blends into the world of Skyrim. The pocked and mottled appearance of iron is most apparent on the large blade of the Greatsword, and remains probably my least favorite feature of iron gear in general, as it just looks way too rustic and battered for my taste. I prefer my Greatswords to be either elegantly deadly or brutally savage, and the Iron Greatsword doesn't pull off either for me very well. With a sort of rough, dull-looking blade and relatively plain hilt and grip, there's really not too much to say about the Iron Greatsword. Much like other iron gear, it is of course iconic to Skyrim, and its design immediately brings many memories of carving through bandits and beasts alike, but nostalgia only carries this thing so far. The grip and hilt are just ridiculously massive with this Greatsword specifically, although I don't think the overall shape of the crossguard is too bad. It's just one that I never use for any meaningful amount of time. Number 22, Bloodskull Blade. This is potentially a hot take, as I know many love this weapon, but I really do not like the look of the Bloodskull blade much at all. Despite its unique and admittedly extremely fun enchantment that lets you shoot beams of energy and its power, I've at times struggled to use this weapon solely due to its unsightly appearance. In theory, I think the design has some cool intent, with a unique blood red blade and periodic ridges of metal making for a very distinctive silhouette. On a two-handed wielding vampire or necromancer, it might not be terrible with certain armors or robes. However, despite its more brutal and bloody nature, I don't find the blade particularly threatening or imposing enough for a greatsword. And whatever small things I can enjoy about the blade completely fall off with the handguard and hilt, which are just plain ugly. Given what this weapon is, a much more intricate and sinister crossguard here or detailed grip would have done wonders for the overall aesthetic of this weapon. Again, maybe a scalding hot take, but bloody hell, this thing is just ugly. Number 21, Chrysamere. This Creation Club added blade returns from Morrowind and possibly Daggerfall, with sort of mixed results in its execution. Although it uses pretty much the exact same model from Morrowind, in my opinion it just looked way better in that game, as it doesn't quite mesh as well into the world of Skyrim as I'd like, and its thinner blade design in Morrowind just fit it better. However, I can appreciate its more traditional longsword design, and I especially like its thinner, more elegant blade, as it is relatively simple compared to other Skyrim greatswords. Unfortunately for Chrysamere specifically, the blade itself is where my full enjoyment of this design begins and ends. It's weird because it's an extremely typical type of longsword, crossguard, and hilt, but there is one thing that I just cannot get over, and it is a minor gripe. But these videos are gripes and grievances. The design on the crossguard just looks exactly like Cyclops' visor to me, and I can't quite get over it, as lame and dumb as that is. Also, side note, for some reason on this weapon in particular, I feel the growing need for scabbards in Skyrim. These massive blades and weapons just sort of floating on the character just look downright awful and have aged horribly, and it's really highlighted on this one in particular. The pommel is also fairly generic, and while it's a much more streamlined sword design than others in this list, it's just not one I find very interesting personally. Number 20, Orcish Greatsword. While I think the general design of the Orcish Greatsword is effortlessly savage and cool in many ways, I can't help but be disappointed in that it looks almost completely identical to the Orcish one-handed sword. Like, seriously, even comparing them side by side, I still have to strain to spot any differences. So while that does knock it down quite a bit for me, as I would like to see some more uniqueness, I can't deny that the Orcish Greatsword has some orcsome qualities. A single-edged massive sword is always going to be cool, as single-edged greatswords are the minority among the group, and the jagged metal looks extremely deadly, with an added fishhook for gutting your foes for good measure. The grip also features the familiar tuft of fur and leather on a slightly curved design that creates an extremely unique silhouette for the weapon. A fantastic and brutal weapon fit for any fan of cleaving foes in two, and while I'm not sure exactly what I would have done or designed differently, I still can't help but feel there was some lost potential with the Orcish Greatsword. Number 19, Umbra. Another Creation Club edition, returning from Morrowind, Umbra gets some bonus points for the large amount of lore surrounding it and its history within the Elder Scrolls franchise. However, much like Chrysamere, I think its model just looks more elegant and deadly within Morrowind, with it featuring a much slimmer blade within that game. This dark Daedric sword is again a fairly simple design when compared to the more fantastical blades of Skyrim, and while I appreciate that, I feel like its design could have been tightened up in a few places. The blade and its details are fantastic, but the aged metal securing it to the crossguard and hilt looks like blurry and fuzzy to me on the model. It's a minor gripe, but one that I can't help but notice. The sword in general just looks more fitting in its scale and size as a one-handed blade, and I probably would have liked it better if it was that rather than a large two-handed variant. Even still, I think it has some extremely flavorful additions to its model, considering its lore, with a very cool purple soul-stealing enchantment effect. Just make sure you don't underestimate the Umbra. Number 18, Nordic Greatsword. How the mighty have fallen. Ordinarily, the Nordic gear consistently has ranked very high within my lists, and for good reason, as Bethesda designers went all out in designing some of the coolest looking gear within the game for that particular gear set. However, I sadly have to say that the Greatsword does not meet up to the high bar of its companions. While there's a lot to like here, there's also just a lot in general. Way too much, in my opinion, is happening with this sword. It feels like the designers had about 10 different ideas of where to go when designing the Greatsword and just finally ended up doing all of them. Whereas other Nordic weapons have this deadly sleekness and elegance to them, the Greatsword is just way too busy. Featuring a strange single-edged weapon tip, an asymmetrical blade with random protrusions, a weird double crossguard separated by fur design, I think it just missed the mark, despite having some extremely cool parts. I think the grip and primary crossguard are top-notch, with a very satisfying shape, and the etchings on the blade itself, as always, look great. If this were trimmed up a bit, it could have been a truly unique and excellent greatsword design, but as it stands, it's a little too unorthodox. Number 17, Ancient Nord Greatsword. Finally securing a place not at the bottom of the list, the Ancient Nord weapon set gets its first dub with the Greatsword. I think it's just a fantastic looking weapon with many design elements I personally enjoy. Besides the rusted and pocked appearance of Ancient Nord metal, something that's a little unavoidable with this weapon set, and its heavy and completely unbalanced looking blade end compared to the rest of the weapon, I actually really love this design. Again, I'm sure it would be a nightmare to wield as it looks extremely top heavy and really just heavy in general, but considering how heavy pretty much all weapons look in Skyrim, we can give it a pass here. The blade has this cleaver-like effect that makes it look extremely deadly, and the way it almost just flows upwards from the crossguard is very satisfying. The grip is nice and lengthy, featuring a small pointed hook for a pommel. In general, just a very intimidating looking weapon, and although not close to my favorite, when it comes to the Ancient Nord gear specifically, this is my favorite one. Number 16, Elven Greatsword. While this sword doesn't disappoint its elven weapon companions in its beauty and elegance, I find it a bit too imposing and large compared to others. While I can appreciate many design elements present on this blade, with it utilizing the winged elven aesthetic very nicely in the bottom half and hilt, and featuring a very nice gentle flowing curve as it reaches the weapon's point, I wish it would have taken a page out of the Elven Battle Axes book. A single-edged, thinner, more elegant weapon would have represented elven gear much better to me and been a more standout addition to the Greatsword lineup, and further differentiated it from the Elven one-handed sword. Again, I don't think it's a terrible design by any means, other than it's just general over-the-top width. It's more the lack of unrealized potential in what a brutally deadly Elven Greatsword could have been. Number 15, Silver Greatsword. Much like the Orcish Greatsword, Bethesda designers got a little lazy with silver by just grabbing the one-handed silver sword model, increasing its size by 70%, and calling it a day. Despite the lack of originality in its design, it's still a great greatsword in its own right in many ways. The silvery blade is unique compared to the more outlandish materials for other weapons, and I particularly enjoy the actual grip of this one. The segment of silvery metal separating the two leather parts in the grip just looks really cool to me in a way that is probably only noticed by the most anal and strange of players. I just think it's neat. While the crossguard itself is extremely oversized and almost bulbous, I still appreciate the uniqueness of its shape and various intricacies. I'll be honest, silver as a weapon type I almost always forget about and have forgotten about in these lists, as I feel like it's pretty rare to come across unless you follow the companion questline. It's not my favorite design ever, of course, but still an appropriately AG weapon fit for slaying even up to 47 werewolves. That's right, we're tapping into periodic humor here. Number 14, Dwarven Greatsword. While yes, this greatsword shares many of the same complaints I have with the Orcish and Silver, and that it's essentially identical to its one-handed counterpart, I only rate it higher solely due to preferring the overall look of the Dwarven version in general. Seriously, it's almost the exact same shape and silhouette, with the only notable difference being slightly altered etching and engravings on the blade, and a much more pronounced and extended crossguard. So while I think more could have been done to make it unique, for the entire Dwarven aesthetic and flavor, it actually fits pretty well. Most Dwarven gear is extremely utilitarian and functional in its design, and if you have a good sword design, why fix what isn't broken and instead just make it bigger? This is an extremely cool greatsword that looks more than capable of toppling giants with the traditional and satisfying golden hued Dwarven metal and broad flat blade. It's also a blade that fits extremely well within the environments of Skyrim and looks great with pretty much any armor set. I also enjoy the engravings on this one as they add just enough flavor without taking away from the design intent here. When it comes to simplistic and straightforward greatsword designs, it's hard to beat this massive blade, though it doesn't quite reach the same heights as the next weapons. Number 13, Daedric Greatsword. Once again, grab your Maul Ninja gear because the demonic Daedric blade calls. I think it's sitting correctly within the middle of the pack, as my feelings on the Daedric Greatsword are primarily neutral to positive, though I can't appreciate it for what it is. It's a massive two-handed demonic weapon of destruction, and is of course appropriately edgy and over the top in its design, per regular Daedric design standards. While it does share many similarities with the Daedric one-handed sword, there's enough uniqueness here to keep things interesting, and I really think this weapon in particular complements the Daedric armor extremely well, looking appropriately menacing and powerful. Unlike other Daedric weapons, the design works better here for the greatsword, as it looks like a weapon that wasn't intended to be used by mortals. Like maybe this is a standard one-handed blade for a large imposing Daedra, but in the hands of our character becomes an overbearing two-handed sword barely capable of being wielded. The blackened, wicked curves and glowing unearthly red hues give it a raw menace not found in many other weapons in the game. And while it's not nearly my favorite, I still appreciate how dramatic it is. Number 12, Dark Greatsword. The Dark Greatsword gets quite a few bonus points for being the closest we get to a flamberge within this list, although it's technically more of a giant crisp blade than anything, and the actual blade isn't really curved that much. This dark blade has some absolutely fantastic details that are hard to ignore, with many intricate celestial shapes and symbols etched along the blade. blade, in between the badass curling snake that winds around it. This is just a fantastic looking weapon for a dark armor wearing evil character, and one that I personally enjoy using quite a bit, as it provides a very unique flavor when compared to other greatswords. The dark sheen present on the model gives it a very otherworldly appearance, fitting for a more sinister character intent on spreading death and despair wherever possible. So quite a fun time. My only slight gripe is the grip, as I feel a slightly curved or more intricate one would have done wonders for the design overall. Even still, I just absolutely love the snake motif and theme present on dark weapons, and I'm glad to see it executed perfectly on the greatsword as well. Number 11, Golden Greatsword. On the opposite end of the spectrum, we have the gloriously beautiful Golden Greatsword. A perfect blade for a paladin or holy warrior, the Golden Greatsword features some incredibly intricate and well-made details that help it to stand out compared to more standard vanilla weapon models. Radiant and regal, I love the details etched into and adorning the hilt. And while I think the blade itself could have used a few more engraved symbols, the overall shape of the blade is very pleasant and elegant while still looking completely functional and very deadly. If you're going for a prestigious type of character or build, then the Golden Greatsword is a fantastic fit for that archetype, as it communicates power and authority in a way that many weapons don't within the game. Much like the Dark Greatsword, its textures and detail compared to vanilla models make it clear this was a mod or add-on with a bit more care and resolution put into it. But that fits given the otherworldly origin of these Daedric artifacts in general. It's a golden weapon fit for a golden god. Number 10, Skyrim Greatsword. Always nice to see at the top of the list, we have the unique and imposing Skyrim Greatsword. Skyrim consistently ranks near the top because of just how much I enjoy using and wielding this weapon type across the wilds of Skyrim, and the Greatsword is one of my favorite designs within the bunch. While my complaints of previous models being way too similar to one-handed variants, I give Skyrim a pass here solely due to my own biases and preferences. The huge carved magical ice that makes it the blade just looks so sick when wielded or stowed, and I love the detail of the metal strip reinforcing and securing the blade to the crossguard and hilt. Small bits of fur protect the wielder's hands so they don't get too chilly, and a large pommel of Skyrim is an ice touch as well, even if it's a little too large for my tastes. I just love the general shape of the blade, and I particularly like the flaring ridge of Skyrim above the crossguard that add a little flavor to what could have been a very straightforward blade design. Overall, a fantastic weapon choice when you really want to show your enemies no mercy. Number 9, Steel Greatsword. While I can't rank steel higher than the next on my list, I can't also in good conscience rank it lower either, as it's frankly one of the most iconic weapons within Skyrim to me. Appearing everywhere within the game and being the poster child of the two-handed weapon category gives it quite a few points when stacked against the others. Fortunately, it's an extremely badass greatsword design in my humble opinion, with a very unique, almost double-tiered grip appearance. The leather wrapped above the crossguard and secured to the ricasso, or unsharpened portion of the blade, is an extremely interesting choice, as it was probably intended to be used for half sorting for better blade maneuvering. With half sorting not being a thing at all in Skyrim, it's a bold choice to include something like this for one of the most common weapons that appear within the game. Still, even if it has no gameplay purpose or ramifications, it remains an incredibly cool design choice that, in my opinion, gives the steel greatsword its own special flavor. The rest of the blade is just great, with the secondary guard having the standard steel etchings and designs and a deadly pronged, spiky appearance. I actually think the primary crossguard could have been even wider, but it complements the overall shape very well regardless. It's just a great design that I think encapsulates much of the aesthetic of Skyrim and its natives very well. Number 8, Ice Blade of the Monarch. If you're feeling particularly cold to your enemies, then it's hard to beat the Ice Blade of the Monarch. This beautiful blade is definitely one of the most simplistically elegant swords within Skyrim. Featuring a much slimmer and more realistic blade than most other swords in this list, despite this also being a returning blade from Morrowind, I actually get heavy Witcher vibes from its general appearance. The lore behind this sword is chilling, with the soul of a frost Atronach being captured within it, giving a frosty, draining enchantment. The glowing blue crystal or gem inlaid within the guard and pommel look fantastic, providing an extremely high fantasy feel without sacrificing the design or looking too cartoonish or outlandish. Probably due to its slimmer appearance, I think this sword just looks great with a quicker, light armor wearing combatant, as you simultaneously slow and dance around your enemies when wielding it. While admittedly the limited and dated combat of Skyrim rarely lets you fully realize the elegance in wielding a greatsword, more just treating them as massive weapons to bludgeon enemies with, I still find myself drawn to this wonderful weapon. It's just very icely done. Number 7, Magebane. While I admit the overall model and appearance of Magebane in Skyrim is a bit weaker than the Ice Blade of the Monarch or even Steel Greatsword, my own personal bias and love for Magebane won't allow me to rank it any lower than this. I have a great deal of nostalgia for Magebane, as it was the weapon that carried me through one of my very first Morrowind playthroughs. I thought it was just such a sick two-handed weapon that could tear through almost anything the game would throw at it. While I think again the Claymore version in Morrowind looks better than this Creation Club model with a slimmer and overall more pointed and deadly looking blade, Magebane is just such an awesome weapon in general that I can't help but love it being available within Skyrim to begin with. Aesthetically, it of course has an extremely unique appearance, with a darker, more muted glass blade and distinctive crossguard. The appearance, name, and enchantment, which makes it deal magicka damage, is perfect for a mage-slaying type assassin, and it's fun to roleplay as a deadly killer who specializes in hunting mages, necromancers, and magic wielders of all types within the world of Skyrim. Magebane remains one of my favorite weapons within all of Elder Scrolls, and I'm happy to include it within the top 10 of my list. Number 6, Nord Hero Greatsword. This weapon shares all of the same praises of the ancient Nord version with almost none of the complaints. It's amazing what a bit of spit and polish can do for an ancient Nord sword, and for this one it makes it one of my favorite looking swords within the game. The cleaned up but muted dark gray of its steel with its intricate blade engravings and hilt help this weapon to look amazing with pretty much every armor set within the game, just completely fitting perfectly well into the general aesthetic and world of Skyrim. It's also just such a heavy looking greatsword that would be wielded by a dragon slaying hero who can shout people to death. To me, this one strikes an extremely good balance between looking over the top and powerful, yet still entirely functional and practical, besides what is probably an extremely heavy blade in general. Regardless, the Nord Hero set needed a win and the greatsword delivers it here. Number 5, Sword of Jiggalag. A legendary blade returning from the Shivering Isles and wielded by the Daedric Prince Jiggalag, the slightly less insane true form of Sheogorath, this sword is a fascinating and intriguing weapon that looks incredibly unique and cool. Essentially using the same model from Oblivion, this large two-handed blade almost looks like it was carved from a single piece of otherworldly Daedric material. And for you real nerds out there, it's probably the closest in appearance we can get to Hearthstone from the Wheel of Time in the Elder Scrolls. The pale appearance of this sword makes it a favorite for me when playing a more lawful good or righteous type of character, as I feel it fits extremely well with that archetype and playstyle given its origins. Delving into the ruins and deeps of Skyrim while wielding this glowing blade feels like you are actually cleansing the land itself, and the rigid, more geometric shape of its crossguard and hilt are a great hint at the attitude and personality of the Daedric prince who crafted it. It helps that it looks adequately deadly and powerful as well, capable of cleaving even the strongest of enemies into two easily. A wonderful weapon for a high-level dragonborn, this almost angelic-looking sword jiggalags its way to a spot near the top of the list. Number 4, Madness Greatsword. On the complete opposite end of the spectrum, we have the alter ego of the Sword of Jiggalag, the much more fantastical and extreme Madness Greatsword. Perfectly representative of the chaotic and twisted Daedric Prince it is modeled after, this jagged, vicious greatsword is one of my favorites within the entire game, and a very welcome addition from the Saints and Seducers Creation Club pack. While it shares a lot of the same attributes as the other Madness weapons, with the asymmetrical and haphazard blade and intricate explosion of edges that make up the crossguard, I think it was just way better executed here with the great sword. This weapon just radiates pure malice, and you know anyone wielding this thing has nothing good in mind. I think the texture work is just really great here as well, with the dark metal of the blade having this satisfying sheen that makes it look razor sharp and insanely deadly. The crossguard hilt and pommel are just a work of art, with so many cool details that make it look menacing and powerful when stowed on the back, where those details become most apparent. It's absolutely one of my favorite looking weapons within the game, and one of my go-to greatswords when using them in a playthrough. And if you disagree, you surely must be mad. Number 3, Dragonbone Greatsword. I have a big old dragon bone to pick with anyone that disagrees with this greatsword being in the top 5 aesthetically. Besides the insanely ugly and disgusting Dragonbone mace, I found myself consistently enjoying the Dragonbone weapon designs, and the greatsword might just be my second favorite in the bunch. Sorry, but still nothing beats that Hipbone Warhammer. This massive sword just goes so well with the canon high-level Dragonborn, who is environmentally conscious enough not to waste any part of a slain dragon, but instead recycle them into weapons to slay even more. The wide, straight crossguard with the added ridge of metal securing and reinforcing the bone blade is definitely one of my favorite designs of a crossguard within the game, and it's such a cool implementation of traditional longsword elements on an extremely fantastical weapon. The bone itself just looks nice and hard. And sharp, and I appreciate the jagged ridges present along the blade's edge, making it look appropriately deadly and fearsome. The massive ring pommel present on all Dragonbone weapons doesn't bother me here at all, unlike some other smaller Dragonbone versions, although I maintain that a spike bit of bone in place of a pommel on these would have looked even better. Overall, this is a straight up badass blade that should make any enemy feel boned on sight. Number 2, Ebony Greatsword. While the Ebony Greatsword isn't my complete favorite among the Ebony lineup, with the mace taking that crown, it's an extremely extremely close second, as I absolutely love the look of this weapon. With single-edged greatswords being a bit scarce in Skyrim, one that is this well designed and sleek is greatly appreciated. And its unique appearance is just so compelling to me compared to most other greatswords in the game. The swirling ebony patterns present on the blade and grip look fantastic, and I especially love the look of the extremely long hilt on this one. With the entire thing being slightly curved and not really featuring a crossguard to speak of, the ebony greatsword just looks like the weapon of a blade master, one who has completely come to understand the sword and how to use it effectively, helped by its relative thinness against other Skyrim weapons. Something about the hilt in particular looks so imposing and intimidating when stowed, as it communicates a level of menace and aura not seen on many other weapons. The design and appearance has a strange timeless look, like it's both ancient yet modern and still as razor sharp and deadly as it ever was. Elegant, refined, badass as hell, almost ebony thing about this blade is just plain awesome. Number 1, Ebony Blade. No matter how hard I try, I cannot escape my inner weeb, as I find the ebony blade to be the straight up most striking and best looking greatsword within the entire game, while at the same time having one of the most interesting enchantment and gameplay mechanics tied to it. Breaking the very Western European style design seen with pretty much every other greatsword in Skyrim, the ebony blade is a straight up odachi, and I'm all here for it. It obviously stands out due to its sheer sleekness and finesse compared to other greatswords, which tend, like all Skyrim weapons, to be heavy and thicker than a bowl of oatmeal. From this list, you can tell I do enjoy a good heavy set and slab of metal greatsword, one that looks more than capable of decapitating even dragons, but I find myself really drawn to thin and elegant greatswords like the ebony blade as well. The ebony patterns worked into the very unique grip, the curvature of the thin deadly blade, and the slight flaring as it reaches the tip all come together to make this weapon a beautiful work of art, and just a joy to wield and see stowed on your character. Given its uniqueness, it does stand out in the world of Skyrim, but in a very good way in my opinion, as it gives your character the ability to aura farm endlessly as a weeby edgelord, just as Talos intended. I only wish the two-handed animations could match the beauty of the blade itself, although the much faster swing speed for the ebony blade compared to other greatswords helps quite a bit here. The enchantment, which grants lifesteal, also has an extremely unique effect that can actually alter your entire playthrough, as it requires the killing of not just any regular old NPC, but those that are considered friendly to the player. This means that poor old farmer you helped down the road just became fuel to power your sword's next level up. It's a very unique and sinister enchantment that I find interesting enough to wish that there were more like it throughout the legendary items of Skyrim. All that being said, let's be honest, it's just a whole hell of a lot of fun to get your Sephiroth on within Skyrim. And there you have it, every greatsword within Skyrim highly subjectively ranked. Let me know in the comments what I missed or what your favorite greatsword is. If you enjoyed, once again like and subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the next one.